She's still breathing? Thought she'd be gone by now." Those were the first words I heard as I came downstairs the morning after my husband's funeral. Not condolences, not concern, just disappointment that I was still alive. My name is Rosalind Dunham. I'm 67 years old. And 3 days ago, I buried the love of my life after 42 years of marriage. What I didn't know was that my family had already started burying me too. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't dead yet, not even close. And I was about to remind them that the quietest voices sometimes speak the loudest truths. This is my story. And if you're hearing it, please stay until the end. Because what happened in that lawyer's office? Well, let's just say justice doesn't always come with a gavel. Sometimes it comes with a patent number and a security camera. My husband was Frederick Dunham. You might have heard of him, founder and CEO of Dunham Industries, a manufacturing and distribution company worth $94 million at the time of his death. The business journals called him a visionary. His colleagues called him a self-made man. His employees called him fair. I called him Fred. And our son Thomas? Thomas called him a god. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. The staircase in our Pasadena home has 17 steps. I know because I've counted them thousands of times over the years. Carrying laundry up, bringing breakfast trays down when Fred was sick, descending in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep. That morning, the morning after Fred's funeral, I counted them again. But this time it was different. This time I was counting them to steady myself, to prepare for whatever waited below. I could hear voices, laughter, the clink of champagne glasses. The funeral had been the day before. We'd buried Fred in Rose Hills Memorial Park, under the oak tree he'd picked out himself 6 months earlier. The service was beautiful, white roses everywhere, his favorite hymn, a eulogy from his business partner that made everyone cry. Even me, though I'd already done most of my crying in private. I'd worn my black Chanel suit, the one Fred bought me for our 40th anniversary. "You deserve to look like the queen you are," he'd said when he gave it to me. I'd protested the price, but he'd insisted. "Rosalind, you've given me everything. Let me give you something back." I touched the sleeve of that suit now as I stood at the top of the stairs. The fabric was soft, expensive. I'd already noticed the small bleach stain near the hem from when I'd cleaned up after Brett spilled something last Christmas. I'd tried to hide it, the way I'd tried to hide so many things over the years. Below me, the voices grew louder. "This one's mine." That was Brett, my 16-year-old grandson. I heard the slap of what sounded like a sticker being pressed onto something. "Careful with that vase, you idiot. It's probably worth more than your whole setup." Ashley, 19, always on her phone. "We should measure this room for the remodel." Jennifer, my daughter-in-law, married to Thomas for 14 years, though it felt like much longer. "I'm thinking spa room, natural light, maybe some reclaimed wood." I gripped the banister, the same banister Fred had refinished by hand one summer, sanding it smooth over 3 weekends while I brought him lemonade and kept him company. My knuckles went white. Slowly I began my descent. 17 steps. By the time I reached the bottom, I understood that everything had already changed. The living room looked like a moving sail. Neon sticky notes covered nearly every surface. Pink, green, yellow, orange. They dotted the grandfather clock Fred's father had given us. The leather armchair where Fred read every evening. The antique side table I'd inherited from my mother. Each note said the same thing. "This one's mine." Ashley was holding her phone up, using some kind of scanning app. She turned slowly, the camera capturing the room's dimensions. "This whole wall can come down," she said to no one in particular. "Open concept, much better flow for content creation." Content creation. She meant her TikTok videos. I stood in the doorway, my black dress still smelling faintly of the funeral home's roses. No one looked up. "Oh, Grandma." Ashley finally noticed me, lowering her phone. "Sorry, we're just, getting organized." "Organized," I repeated. The word felt heavy in my mouth. "The lawyer's coming in a few days for the will reading," Thomas said, emerging from the kitchen with a coffee mug. Fred's favorite mug, the one that said "World's Best Dad" that Thomas had given him 20 years ago. We figured we should start cataloging assets. Assets. He was talking about our life together like it was a warehouse inventory. "Where should I sit?" I asked quietly. "Oh." Jennifer looked around the room as if noticing for the first time that all the chairs were either marked with sticky notes or piled with papers. There's a folding chair in the garage. Brett, honey, can you grab that for your grandmother? Brett didn't move from his position by the china cabinet where he was photographing each piece. Busy, Mom. I'll stand, I said. Don't be silly, Jennifer said, but she made no move to help. Thomas, where did we put those folding chairs? I walked past them, through the living room where I'd hosted 42 Christmas mornings, past the fireplace where Fred and I had hung stockings for Thomas when he was little, past the window seat where I'd read thousands of books while waiting for Fred to come home from work. Everything had a sticky note. Even the wedding photo on the mantel, the one taken in 1984 with Fred's arm around my waist and my head on his shoulder, had a small green tag stuck to the frame. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. The kitchen was worse. Someone had already started going through the cabinets. My grandmother's china, the set I'd carefully wrapped and unwrapped for every holiday dinner, was stacked on the counter, each piece tagged. The crystal glasses Fred and I had gotten as wedding gifts were lined up like soldiers, awaiting assignment. We're doing an inventory, David said. He was Thomas's cousin, a real estate developer from San Diego who I saw maybe twice a year. He had a clipboard and was checking things off. For estate tax purposes. I see, I said. Don't worry, Rosalind. We'll make sure you're taken care of. Patricia, David's sister, patted my arm. She smelled like expensive perfume, the kind advertised in magazines I couldn't afford anymore. Thomas said you can stay in the guest cottage. It's cozy. The guest cottage. The 400-square-foot building at the back of the property that Fred had built as a studio, where he'd sometimes retreat when he needed to think, where we'd stored old furniture and Christmas decorations. That's very generous, I heard myself say. Patricia smiled. We're family. We look after each other. I turned to look at the kitchen table, the one where I'd served approximately 15,330 dinners over 42 years, where Thomas had done his homework, where Fred and I had discussed everything from finances to fears. Someone had put a bright pink sticky note on it. This one's mine, Ashley's handwriting. I should start dinner, I said automatically. Jennifer laughed. Oh, Rosalind, don't worry about that. We ordered catering. There's so much to do, we can't spend time cooking. Right, I said. Of course. Actually, Jennifer continued, checking her phone, the caterers should be here in an hour. Why don't you rest? You must be exhausted. What she meant was, why don't you disappear? So I did. The mudroom off the kitchen had a small bench where Fred used to sit to take off his work boots. I sat there now, in my funeral dress, holding a paper plate someone had given me with a piece of dry chicken and some potato salad. Through the wall, I could hear them laughing. Did you see her face when I said guest cottage? That was Patricia. Priceless. David. I mean, what did she expect? The woman hasn't worked a day in her life. Jennifer. She built soup. Dad built an empire. Brett, parroting something he'd probably heard an adult say. More laughter. I set down my plate. The chicken was cold and I wasn't hungry anyway. From my sweater pocket, I pulled out a small envelope I'd been carrying since yesterday. It was yellowed with age, the seal broken and carefully resealed years ago. Inside was a single piece of paper, a bank memorandum dated April 3rd, 2011, 15 years ago. The words were faded but still legible. Wire transfer confirmation, $850,000. Recipient, Dunham Industries operating account. Source, R.L. Brightwell Trust. R.L. Brightwell. My maiden name was Rosalind Louise Brightwell. I folded the paper carefully and put it back in the envelope, back in my pocket, close to my heart. They didn't know. They had never asked, but I remembered everything. April 2011. Rosalind? Fred's voice came from his study at 11 o'clock at night. I'd been reading in bed, but I'd heard him on the phone earlier, the tone that meant bad news, the kind of conversations where every sentence was weighted with disaster. I put on my robe and walked downstairs. He was sitting at his desk with his head in his hands. Papers were scattered everywhere. His computer screen showed what looked like a spreadsheet full of red numbers. What's wrong? I asked, though I already knew. I'd seen the signs for months, the late nights, the skipped meals, the way he'd gotten quiet during dinner. I'm going to lose it, he said. His voice cracked. Everything. 30 years of work, and I'm going to lose it all. I pulled a chair next to him. Tell me. He did. The story came out in fragments. A major client had backed out of a 3-year contract, taking 15% of the company's revenue with them. 2 other clients had followed. The banks were nervous. They'd called in some loans. There was a deal on the table with investors from New York, a merger that would save everything, but they wanted collateral, proof that Dunham Industries was worth saving. How much? I asked. $850,000. I'd need it in the escrow account by Friday to show liquidity, to prove we can weather this. He laughed bitterly. I don't have it, Rosie. I remortgaged the house last year to cover payroll. The banks won't lend me more. Our savings are gone. The investors, they want to see the money first. Cash reserves. Proof we're stable enough to be worth the risk. He looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in 40 years together. Fear. If I don't close this deal, he said quietly, we lose everything. The company, this house, Thomas's college fund, everything I've built. I sat there for a moment thinking. Through the window, I could see the rose garden Fred had planted for me on our 20th anniversary. The lights were off, but I knew every bush, every bloom. Go to bed, I told him. Get some sleep. Rosie, I can't. Go to bed, Fred. Trust me. He looked confused, but did as I asked. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the creak of our bedroom door. I went to our bedroom closet and pulled down a box from the top shelf, the same box I'd brought with me when we got married in 1984. Inside were the pieces of my old life, the things I'd carried forward. My grandmother's emerald necklace. 6 carats, Art Deco setting, appraised at $180,000. My diamond wedding set. Not the simple gold band I wore daily, but the upgrade Fred had given me on our 25th anniversary. 2 carats, flawless, platinum setting. $220,000. The gold bangles my mother had given me, inherited from her mother, who'd inherited them from India when her family emigrated in 1920. 22-carat gold, intricate filigree. $95,000. My grandmother's pearl brooch, the one she'd worn in her wedding photo. Mikimoto pearls, 1940s. $65,000. And the piece I'd kept hidden even from Fred. A Cartier watch my father had given my mother before he died. She'd left it to me, made me promise never to sell it unless I truly needed to. Vintage, rare, worth $290,000 to the right buyer. I laid them all out on the bed. $850,000 worth of family history. Everything I had left of the women who came before me. The next morning, I told Fred I was going to visit my friend Sarah in San Francisco. She was a psychologist I'd known since college, and he knew we sometimes got together for lunch. Instead, I drove to a jewelry dealer Sarah had once mentioned, a reputable place that handled estate sales. I'd called ahead. They were expecting me. Mrs. Dunham, the dealer said, looking at the pieces I'd spread on his desk. These are museum quality. Are you certain? I'm certain. I need to ask, are these legally yours? I'll need documentation. I showed him. My grandmother's will, my mother's will, the receipts from Fred's purchase of the anniversary diamonds. Everything was in order. Everything was mine to sell. He made calls. 2 appraisers came in. They measured, examined, consulted reference books. By 3 o'clock, I had a cashier's check for $850,000. I drove to the bank, not our local branch in Pasadena, but a downtown location where no one knew me. I had them wire the money directly to Dunham Industries' operating account. On the transfer memo, I wrote, Bridge Capital, Anonymous. Then I drove home. Fred was in his study again, staring at the same spreadsheet. I walked in and set a cup of coffee next to him. Check your account, I said. He looked at me, confused. Then he pulled up the bank's website on his computer. I watched his face as he saw the balance, watched as he refreshed the page, refreshed it again. What, Rosie, where did this come from? It doesn't matter. $850,000? Rosie, what did you do? I sat in the chair next to him. I sold some jewelry, old family pieces, things I didn't need anymore. Your grandmother's necklace? Rosie, you loved that necklace. I love you more. I took his hand. Use it. Save the company. Close the deal with the New York investors. And Fred? Yes? Don't tell anyone it came from me. Not Thomas, not your partners. No one. Why not? Because they need to see you as strong. They need to see Dunham Industries as your achievement. If they know your wife bailed you out, I smiled. It won't look good. Rosie, promise me, Fred. He pulled me into his arms. I felt him shaking. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. Now go save your empire. He called the New York investors that afternoon. The deal closed 3 days later. Within a year, Dunham Industries had recovered. Within 2 years, it was more profitable than ever. No one ever knew where that $850,000 came from. Fred offered to buy back my jewelry, found similar pieces, spent months searching. But it wasn't the same, and we both knew it. Keep the money in the business, I told him. Consider it an investment. Then you're a co-founder, he said. I'm putting that in writing. And he did. He had his lawyer, Richard Pemberton, draw up papers naming me as co-founder of the trust that held all of Dunham Industries' assets. My name went right next to his. He showed me the document, signed and notarized. No one else will see this unless something happens to me, he said. But Rosie, this is proof. Legal proof. You saved this company. I put the document in that old box, the one from the top of our closet, and I never mentioned it again. Rosalind? Maggie Sullivan appeared in the mudroom doorway. She was 35, had been with our family for 7 years, originally hired as a part-time nurse when Fred's father was dying, then stayed on to help with various things around the house. Somewhere along the way, she'd become more than help. She'd become family. Or at least she'd become family to Fred and me. Oh, honey, she said, seeing my paper plate of cold chicken. This is where they put you? It's fine, I said automatically. It's not fine. She pulled out her phone. I'm ordering you real food. What do you want? I'm not hungry. Rosalind. She sat down next to me on the bench. What's happening here? Why are there sticky notes on everything? Through the wall, we could hear Jennifer's voice rising with excitement. I've already contacted the contractor. We could start demolition next month. Maggie's eyes widened. Demolition? They're planning renovations, I said. For after. After what? I met her eyes. After I'm gone. You're 67 years old and healthy. You could live another 30 years. I don't think they're planning to wait that long. Maggie stood up abruptly. I'm going to say something. Please don't. I caught her hand. Not yet. Rosalind, they're treating you like I'm already dead? I finished. I know, but Maggie, please. Let them think they've won. Why? I touched my pocket, felt the outline of that old envelope. Because sometimes the best way to win is to let them think they've already defeated you. Maggie looked at me for a long moment. Then slowly, she nodded. You have a plan. I have documents, I said, and a lawyer. And Fred had... I paused. Fred had a way of thinking ahead. Good, Maggie squeezed my hand. But I'm still ordering you food. Real food. From that Italian place you like. As she walked away, pulling out her phone, I heard Jennifer's voice again from the other room. Has anyone called the appraiser yet? I want to know what that china's worth. Might as well sell it. It's not like Rosalind's hosting dinner parties anymore. That china, the set my grandmother had brought from Massachusetts in 1945. The set I'd carefully washed by hand after every holiday dinner for 42 years. This one's mine, Ashley had written on the tag. I stood up, my knees stiff, and walked to the mudroom window. It overlooked the back garden, the roses, the fountain Fred had installed on our 35th anniversary, the cottage where they wanted to move me, the cottage where I was supposed to disappear. But in my pocket, against my heart, was proof that I'd never disappeared at all. I'd been there all along, invisible but essential, the foundation holding everything together. They just couldn't see it yet. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed, the bed Fred and I had shared for 42 years, in the master bedroom we'd designed together when we remodeled in 1998. Fred had wanted a sitting area by the windows. I'd wanted a reading nook. We'd compromised and created both. I lay there for a moment, looking at his side of the bed. Still made, untouched since his last morning. I'd changed the sheets the day before the funeral. I couldn't bear to sleep in them anymore without him, but I'd left his pillow exactly as he'd left it. There were voices downstairs. I checked the clock. 7:30 a.m. When I came down, still in my robe, I found Jennifer directing 2 young men carrying boxes up the stairs. Oh, good, you're up, she said brightly. The movers are here. Movers? We discussed this yesterday, remember? Her smile was patient, the kind you'd use with a confused child. You're moving to the cottage. It'll be much cozier for you. I don't remember agreeing to that. Well, Thomas and I talked about it, and really it makes the most sense. This house is so big, and you're here all alone now. The cottage will be perfect. Less to manage, and you'll have your privacy. This is my home. Of course it is. And you're not going anywhere, you're just relocating to a different part of the property. Jennifer turned back to the movers. Everything in the master bedroom, please. Box it all up. We'll sort through it later. I stood there in my robe, watching strangers pack up my life. Thomas appeared from the kitchen. Mom, hi. Did Jennifer explain? She said I'm moving to the cottage. Right. Just temporarily while we figure things out. The will reading's in a few days, and then we'll have a better sense of the estate situation. Estate situation. He was talking about his father's death like it was a property dispute. Thomas, I kept my voice steady. This is my bedroom. Mine and Fred's. I know, Mom, but he glanced at Jennifer. We need the space. Jennifer and I are going to be managing Dad's affairs from here, and we'll need room for an office, for meetings. The cottage is really nice. Dad fixed it up a few years ago, remember? Fred had fixed it up. He'd insulated it, added a small bathroom, put in heating. For when I need to think, he'd told me. Or for when you need space from me. We'd laughed about it. It had been a joke. Now it was my new home. Fine, I said. Thomas looked relieved. Great. The movers will have you set up by this afternoon. I went back upstairs, got dressed in the bathroom while strangers boxed up my clothes. When I came out, my jewelry box was gone. My books were gone. The framed photos from my dresser, including our wedding photo, including the picture of Thomas as a baby, were being wrapped in newspaper. Excuse me, I said to one of the movers. Those photos, everything's being inventoried, ma'am, he said apologetically. We're just following instructions. I found my wedding photo in a box labeled Miss C. Donate? The question mark felt deliberate. By noon, the master bedroom was empty. My clothes were in the cottage, hung haphazardly in a tiny closet that smelled like mothballs. My books were stacked on the floor because there were no bookshelves. My jewelry box. I never saw it again. Later, I'd find out Ashley had claimed it for vintage costume pieces. The costume pieces included my mother's pearl earrings and my grandmother's gold locket. I sat on the narrow cot someone had dragged in from somewhere, not even my bed, just a folding cot with a thin mattress, and looked around my new home. 400 square feet, one window, a bathroom the size of a closet, a hot plate instead of a stove. Through the window I could see the main house. In what used to be my bedroom, Ashley was already setting up ring lights. Perfect for my content studio, I heard her squeal. I pulled out my phone. They hadn't taken that yet, and called the only person I trusted. Rosalind? Richard Pemberton's voice was warm, concerned. I was going to call you. Are you all right? They moved me into the cottage. A pause. The storage cottage? That's the one. Rosalind, do you want me to call Thomas? This is inappropriate, especially before the will reading. No, I said, don't call him. Are you sure? Because I can... Richard, when Fred came to see you last year, before he got sick, you said he brought documents. Another pause, longer this time. Yes. I need you to prepare everything. The documents, the certificates, all of it. Whatever Fred set up, whatever he planned, it's time. The will reading is in 3 days. I know. Rosalind, what they're doing to you, it's not right. But once I present Fred's will, once they know what he actually planned, Richard's voice was careful. It's going to devastate them. Thomas just moved his grieving mother into a storage shed. My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. Whatever happens at that will reading, whatever Fred planned, they earned it. All right, Richard said. I'll have everything ready. And Rosalind? I'm sorry. Fred loved you very much. He'd hate seeing you treated this way. I know he would. That's why he planned ahead. After I hung up, I sat on that cot in that tiny cottage and let myself cry. Not because they'd moved me. I'd lived in worse places, briefly, when Fred and I were first married and money was tight. Not because of the cottage itself, but because my son, the boy I'd raised, the child I'd nursed and read to, and driven to soccer practice and helped with homework. My son had looked at me that morning and seen nothing but an inconvenience, a problem to be solved, a placeholder to be moved out of the way. When had I become invisible to him? Or had I always been, and I just never noticed? That night, Maggie brought me dinner. Real dinner, pasta from the Italian place, bread, salad, tiramisu for dessert. "I'm not letting you eat hot plate meals," she said, setting everything up on the cottage's tiny table. "And before you say you're not hungry, I'm not leaving until you eat." I ate. Maggie was right. I needed it. "They're having a party," Maggie said after a while. "In the main house. Jennifer invited people over. Celebrating Frederick's legacy, she called it. A party. Catered, open bar, about 30 people. I heard Ashley telling someone they're posting it all on Instagram. Honoring Dad's life or something. Fred had been dead for 4 days. They asked if I wanted to serve," Maggie continued. "I said no. Actually, I said several things, most of which I won't repeat. Jennifer told me I was being inappropriate and emotional. You should go," I said. "You need this job." "I don't need this job. I have my nursing license. I can work anywhere." Maggie leaned forward. "Rosalind, I'm staying. Not for them. For you." "Maggie, Fred asked me to," she said quietly. "Last month, before he went into the hospital for the last time, he asked me to look after you. He said they don't see her, but you do. Promise me you'll stay." My eyes filled with tears. "He said that?" "He said a lot of things. He told me about the documents he'd filed, about the will he'd revised. He told me—" Maggie hesitated. "He told me you were the smartest person he'd ever known, and the strongest, and that he'd spent 40 years watching you make him look good. His words, 'She made me look good, Maggie, and I let her. That was wrong.'" I couldn't speak. "He wanted to fix it," Maggie said, "before he died. He wanted them to know. So he did something about it. And Richard Pemberton has all the proof." From the main house, I heard laughter, music. The party had started. "3 more days," I said. "Then they'll know too." "What are you going to do after?" Maggie asked. "After the will reading?" I looked at her. "I'm going to take back my name, and then I'm going to make sure no other woman's story disappears the way mine almost did." Maggie smiled. "Fred would love that." "I hope so," I said, "because I'm doing it in both our names." I woke to voices outside the cottage. Through the small window I could see Thomas, Jennifer, David, and Patricia standing in a circle on the lawn, clipboards in hand. They were dividing up the garden, literally pointing at sections and making notes. "The roses can go," Jennifer was saying. "We'll put in an infinity pool. Much more modern." The roses. Fred had planted those for our 20th anniversary. 22 bushes, 1 for each year we'd been together at the time. He'd spent 3 weekends on his knees, getting the soil just right. I pulled on my robe and opened the cottage door. "Good morning," I called. They looked up, startled, as if they'd forgotten I lived here. "Oh, Mom," Thomas said. "We're just doing some planning, for the property." "I see." "We're having a family meeting in an hour," Jennifer added. "Business matters, estate planning stuff. Very boring." "I should be there," I said, "if it's about Fred's estate." "It's really more about the company transition," Thomas said quickly. "Technical things. You wouldn't be interested." "I'd like to be there anyway." Jennifer and Thomas exchanged a look. "Mom," Thomas said carefully, "this is just for people involved in the business side. We don't want to bore you with details. I'm Fred's widow. I think I should be involved in decisions about his estate." "And you will be," Jennifer said with that patient smile. "After the will reading. This is just preliminary planning, for those of us who'll be managing things going forward." Those of us. The words hung in the air. "I see," I said again. They turned back to their discussion, dismissing me. I stood there for a moment longer, then went back inside. But I left the window open. An hour later, I could hear them clearly from the main house. They'd gathered in the dining room, the one I'd set for countless holiday dinners, where I'd polished the table every week, where Fred and I had hosted business dinners that led to million-dollar contracts. "So the Lake Tahoe property," David's voice carried across the lawn. "That goes to me, right? Dad promised it when we went fishing last summer." "The stock portfolio is mine," Patricia said. "I'm the only one with investment experience. I want the art collection." That was Jennifer. "The Rothko alone is worth $200,000. Can I get the Tesla? Ashley, I need it for my brand. A 67-year-old woman's brand doesn't need a Tesla. Laughter. Speaking of Mom, Thomas said, we should discuss her monthly allowance. I'm thinking $2,000? That should cover basics. That's generous, Jennifer agreed. It's not like she has real expenses. What about the cottage rent? David asked. More laughter. I'm kidding, but seriously, we should formalize something. For appearances. $2,000 a month, Thomas confirmed. We'll call it a living stipend. She gets to stay in the cottage rent-free. That's fair. Fair. They were deciding how much of Fred's money I'd be allowed to live on. What about medical expenses? That was Maggie's voice. I hadn't realized she was there. What about them? Jennifer asked. Rosalind's 67. She'll have medical expenses. $2,000 a month won't cover. Maggie, Thomas interrupted. This is family business. I thought I was family. You're help, Jennifer said bluntly. You're not blood. This doesn't concern you. A pause. Then, you're all disgusting. Excuse me? Jennifer's voice went sharp. You heard me. Fred's been dead less than a week, and you're dividing up his assets like he was a lottery ticket. And Rosalind, the woman who was married to him for 42 years, who built this family, you've got her living in a storage shed on a $2,000 allowance. I think you should leave, Thomas said coldly. I think you should remember who your father was and be ashamed of who you've become. I heard a chair scrape back. Footsteps. The front door slammed. 30 seconds later, Maggie appeared at my cottage door, shaking with anger. I quit, she said. I can't work for them anymore. Maggie, no. I need to look at myself in the mirror. And I can't do that if I'm working for people who treat you like garbage. She sat down on my cot. I have savings. I'll be fine until I find something else. They'll make things difficult for you. References? I don't need their references. I have my license, my credentials, and a clear conscience. She looked at me. Rosalind, how much longer are you going to let them do this? 2 more days, I said. Just 2 more days. Jennifer knocked on my cottage door the next afternoon. Rosalind, I've made you a doctor's appointment, just a checkup, nothing to worry about. I saw Dr. Mitchell 3 months ago. It's been a stressful time. We just want to make sure you're managing. Thomas is concerned about your memory. My memory is fine. Of course it is. But humor us, please. The appointment's in an hour. The doctor's office was new. Not Dr. Sarah Mitchell, my friend and physician of 20 years, but someone Jennifer had chosen. A Dr. Robert Chen, whose office was in a medical building I'd never been to. Jennifer drove me. In the waiting room, she filled out paperwork. Do you remember your birthday? The nurse asked me during intake. June 14th, 1959, I said. And where are we right now? I stared at her. Are you serious? Just standard questions, Mrs. Dunham. We're at 455 South Lake Avenue, Pasadena, in Dr. Chen's office. It's Tuesday, March 18th, 2026. The weather is 72 degrees and partly cloudy. The nurse made notes. Dr. Chen was young, professional, and clearly briefed by Jennifer, who insisted on staying in the room. Mrs. Dunham, your daughter-in-law has expressed some concerns about cognitive changes. Have you noticed any memory issues? No. Do you ever forget where you've put things? Doesn't everyone? Do you ever feel confused about what day it is? Only when I first wake up, like every human being on the planet. Jennifer leaned forward. She forgot my birthday last month. Your birthday is October 12th, I said. I sent you a card. You never responded. Dr. Chen made notes. I'd like to do some cognitive testing, just routine. Can you count backwards from 100 by sevens? I did. Perfectly. Can you remember these 3 words? Apple, table, penny. I'll ask you again in a few minutes. Apple, table, penny, I repeated. He asked more questions. Who's the president? What year is it? Simple math problems, drawing a clock face. I answered everything correctly. Now, what were those 3 words I asked you to remember? Apple, table, penny. Dr. Chen smiled. You're doing great, Mrs. Dunham. Jennifer frowned. However, Dr. Chen continued, given the recent loss of your husband, I'd like to recommend a mild anti-anxiety medication. Grief can be very difficult. I don't need medication, I said. I'm grieving, not ill. Mom, Jennifer said gently, maybe you should consider it. Just something to help you cope. What she meant was something to make me more compliant. "No, thank you," I said firmly. After the appointment in the parking lot, I called Dr. Sarah Mitchell from my cell phone while Jennifer was getting the car. "Rosalind, are you all right?" Jennifer just tried to have me declared cognitively impaired. A sharp intake of breath. "What?" I told her about the appointment, the questions, the subtle suggestion that I was confused or forgetful. "That's medical manipulation," Sarah said angrily, "and it's probably grounds for elder abuse. Rosalind, do you want me to document this? Can you? I'll make notes in your file. And Rosalind, be careful. If Jennifer's trying to establish cognitive decline, she might be planning to challenge the will or get power of attorney." "She won't succeed," I said. Fred made sure of that. "Good, but watch yourself, and call me if anything else happens." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Jennifer's face when Dr. Chen said I was fine. She'd looked disappointed. She wanted me to be incompetent. She wanted me declared unfit. The question was, why? What did she know about the will that made her so desperate to discredit me before the reading? I woke at 2 a.m. to complete darkness. The little heater I'd been running had gone silent. The digital clock was dark. I fumbled for my phone. Dead. I'd been charging it, but the power was out. My heart medication was in the mini fridge. It needed to stay cold. I felt my way to the door and stepped outside. The main house blazed with light. Power was fine there. Just the cottage was dark. I made my way carefully across the lawn, using the house lights to guide me. The back door was locked. I knocked. No answer. I knocked louder. Through the window I could see into the kitchen. The lights were on, but no one was there. Finally I went around to the front door. It was unlocked. Inside I could hear music coming from upstairs. Ashley's room, probably. Everyone else was asleep. I found the circuit breaker box in the garage. The cottage's breaker had been switched off. Not tripped. Switched. Deliberately. I flipped it back on and returned to the cottage. The heater hummed to life. The clock blinked 2:17 a.m. I opened the mini fridge. My heart medication bottle was warm to the touch. Ruined. In the morning, Maggie came by with coffee. "I need your help," I told her. "I need you to check something." We went to the garage together. Maggie examined the circuit breaker box carefully. "These boxes have security cameras," she said, pointing. "Fred installed them last year. He was worried about someone tampering with the electrical system after that fire scare." "Can we access the footage?" "If we have the password. Do you know it?" I thought for a moment. Fred always used the same password for security things. Our anniversary. June 14th, 1984. Maggie pulled out her phone and logged into the home security system. She scrolled back to last night, 1:47 a.m. On the screen, clear as day, was Brett. He walked up to the circuit breaker box, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and flipped the cottage's breaker off. Then he walked away. "That little," Maggie started. "Save that footage," I said. "Send it to yourself, and to Richard Pemberton." "Rosalind, this is serious. This could have hurt you. You have a heart condition." "I know." "We should call the police." "No, not yet." I took a breath. "One more day. Tomorrow is the will reading. Let them have one more day to make it worse." Maggie looked like she wanted to argue, but she sent the footage to Richard instead. 6 months earlier, October 2024, I didn't know it then, but while I'd been grocery shopping that October afternoon, Fred had been in Richard Pemberton's office, making plans. Richard told me about it later, after everything came out. He said Fred had walked in looking tired but determined, carrying a briefcase full of documents. "I need to revise my will," Fred had told him. "Completely. And I need to do it in a way they can't contest." "Who's they?" Richard had asked. "Thomas, Jennifer, the kids. I need to make sure Rosalind is protected. More than protected. I need her to be recognized for what she actually contributed." Fred had been diagnosed with his heart condition 2 weeks earlier. Genetic, degenerative, ultimately fatal. The doctors gave him 6 months to a year, he'd told me. But what he hadn't told me was what he planned to do about it. In Richard's office that day, Fred had laid out everything. The jewelry sale in 2011, the IPO strategy in 2012, every contract I'd helped with, every crisis I'd solved, every decision I'd influenced. "She did all this?" Richard had asked, looking at the documentation. All of it. And I took credit. I let Thomas think it was all me. I let everyone think it was all me. Fred's voice had been heavy with regret. I thought I was protecting her, letting her stay private, letting her avoid the pressure. But I was really just erasing her. So what do you want to do? Fred had pulled out a USB drive. I've been recording conversations in the house, just the family. I wanted to see how they'd treat Rosalind when I wasn't in the room. The recordings, Richard later told me, had been damning. Thomas complaining about when Mom finally goes, Jennifer planning renovations once she's out, Ashley and Brett joking about my age, my memory, my usefulness. I want provisions, Fred had said. If they treat her with respect after I die, the will is straightforward. But if they don't, if they treat her the way they've been talking about her, he'd paused. I want consequences. The point system had been Fred's idea. Every cruel comment caught on the security system, every act of disrespect, every dismissal, each one would cost them money. But more than that, Fred had wanted the truth to come out. The IPO strategy, he'd told Richard. Rosalind wrote it. She filed for the patent under a pseudonym, thinking she was just protecting herself if I ever got sued or if the company failed. She didn't realize what that meant legally. What did it mean? It means she owns the intellectual property, not the company. Her, the licensing fees, the royalties, they've been accumulating in an account she doesn't know about. I've been setting them aside, saving them for her. 15 years of royalties. Millions of dollars. I want it all documented, Fred had said. Handwriting analysis, patent records, witness statements. I want proof that can't be disputed, and I want it presented at the will reading so they all hear it at once. Fred, Richard had said carefully, this is going to devastate your son. My son, Fred had replied, is planning to move his mother into a storage cottage and give her a $2,000 monthly allowance from an estate she helped build. If that devastates him, good. Maybe he'll learn something. One day before the will reading, Maggie arrived at my cottage at 9 a.m, out of breath and carrying a small box. You need to see this, she said. What is it? Jennifer told me to clean out Fred's study. She wants to turn it into a yoga studio. Maggie set the box on my tiny table. I found a safe, behind the bookshelf. The combination was your birthday. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written in Fred's handwriting. My dearest Rosalind, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope, God, I hope that you've been treated with the love and respect you deserve. But I'm not confident that's what happened. I've heard the way Thomas talks when he thinks I'm not listening. I've seen the way Jennifer looks at you, like you're already a ghost. So I've made plans. Richard has everything, the documents proving what you contributed, the patent you filed, the recordings of how they speak about you. I should have spoken up for you years ago. I should have told Thomas the truth, that every success I had was built on your foundation, that you saved the company, that you wrote the strategy that made us millions. I was afraid if I gave you credit, they'd see me as less. How pathetic is that? I was afraid of being seen as I truly was. A man who was only as good as his wife made him look. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm dying, and I'm finally telling the truth. You were never less than me, Rosalind. You were always more. There were more letters. Some addressed to Thomas, explaining everything. Some addressed to Richard with instructions. One addressed to Maggie, thanking her for staying with me. And one more document, a video file on a USB drive labeled Play at Will Reading. We should watch it, Maggie said quietly. I plugged the USB into my phone. Fred's face appeared on the screen, thinner than I remembered, clearly recorded in his final weeks. His voice filled the tiny cottage. To my family, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And it means Richard has chosen to play this video because of how you've treated Rosalind since my death. Everything you think you know about my success is incomplete. Rosalind saved Dunham Industries twice. She wrote the expansion strategy that made the IPO possible. She has been my partner in every meaningful way, and I failed to acknowledge that publicly. The documents Richard will present are not revenge. They're truth. And if hearing that truth devastates you, ask yourself why you're more upset about losing money than about how you've treated the woman who made that money possible in the first place. Rosalind, if you're watching, I'm sorry for every time I let them diminish you. For every time I took credit that should have been shared. For waiting until I was dying to set the record straight. You deserved better. You still do. Take what's yours. Build something beautiful with it. And know that I loved you more than I ever successfully showed. The video ended. I sat there, unable to speak. He really loved you, Maggie said softly. I know, I whispered. I always knew. Tomorrow, Maggie said, they're going to find out what you really are, not what they thought you were. I nodded. Tomorrow, in Richard Pemberton's office, my son would learn that his mother wasn't just the woman who made soup. Tomorrow the truth would come out, and I would finally be seen. Richard Pemberton's law office was all glass and polished mahogany, the kind of place that smelled like expensive leather and old money. I'd been here before, years ago, when Fred and I updated our estate plans after Thomas was born. That felt like a lifetime ago. I arrived early, carrying only my purse and the box of letters Maggie had found. Richard met me in the lobby. Are you ready? He asked quietly. I've been ready for a week. For years, maybe. He led me to a conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see them arriving. Thomas in a dark suit, looking confident. Jennifer in designer clothes I recognized from her Instagram. Ashley with her phone already out recording. Brett slouching behind them. David and Patricia, dressed like they were attending a gala rather than a will reading. Maggie slipped in last, sitting beside me without a word. Thomas looked surprised to see her. Maggie, this is family only. Ms. Sullivan is named in the will, Richard said smoothly. She stays. The room went quiet. Jennifer recovered first, her smile tight. Of course. How thoughtful of Frederick. They took their seats around the conference table. Thomas sat at the head, as if he owned the room already. I was given a chair at the far end. The folding chair, again. Thank you all for coming, Richard began, opening his briefcase. We're here to execute the last will and testament of Frederick Allen Dunham, revised and finalized September 3rd, 2024. Wait, Jennifer interrupted. Revised? I thought the will was from 2015. Mr. Dunham made significant revisions last fall, all properly witnessed and notarized. Richard pulled out a small digital recorder. Before we discuss specific distributions, Mr. Dunham requested I play a video message. It's important context. He pressed play. Fred's face filled the screen mounted on the wall. He looked tired, thinner than I remembered, but his eyes were clear and steady. If you're watching this, I'm gone. And before we discuss who gets what, there are some truths you need to hear. In 2011, when Dunham Industries was 90 days from bankruptcy, I told Rosalind we were finished. She didn't panic. She didn't fall apart. She drove to San Francisco and sold every piece of jewelry she owned. Her grandmother's emerald necklace, her mother's pearls, her wedding diamonds, $850,000 worth of family heirlooms. She wired the money to the company anonymously and told me never to tell anyone it came from her. She saved us. She saved everything. In 2012, when the board rejected every IPO strategy I presented, Rosalind wrote a 47-page expansion framework. She submitted it anonymously. I presented it as my own work. The board approved it unanimously. It raised $47 million and became the foundation of everything we built afterward. Every success I'm credited with had her fingerprints on it, and I let everyone believe it was all me. Thomas had gone pale. Jennifer's mouth hung open. Ashley had lowered her phone. The video continued. To my family, if you've treated Rosalind with love and respect since my death, then this will be straightforward. But if you haven't, well, I've been watching, and I've planned accordingly. Richard has documentation of everything. Every contribution Rosalind made. Every cruel word spoken about her. All of it. This isn't revenge. It's truth. And if you're angry about what you're about to hear, ask yourself, are you angry at me for lying? Or angry at yourselves for believing the lie was easier than seeing her? The screen went black. Silence. Thomas found his voice first. Dad was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly. Your father was examined by 3 physicians, Richard said calmly. All confirmed he was of sound mind. These revisions are legal and binding. He pulled out a thick folder. Now, per Mr. Dunham's instructions, I need to review what he called the behavioral audit. Behavioral audit? Jennifer's voice was sharp. Your home security system records audio, Mr. Dunham reviewed all recordings from the day of his funeral through yesterday. Richard projected a document onto the screen. 47 statements were deemed ill of his mother, per his exact wording. Each statement carries a financial penalty of $100,000. He began reading. Thomas Dunham, March 15th, 11:47 a.m. She's still breathing? Thought she'd be gone by now. Penalty, $100,000. Jennifer Dunham, March 15th, 2:23 p.m. She built soup. He built an empire. Penalty, $100,000. Brett Dunham, March 15th, 8:34 p.m. Can we keep her pension checks if we forward her mail? Penalty, $100,000. He kept reading. The list scrolled on the screen. 47 entries. Dates, times, exact quotes. By number 30, Jennifer was crying. Thomas sat frozen, staring at the table. The total, Richard said, is $4.7 million in statement penalties. Additionally, attempted medical manipulation to establish cognitive decline carries a $1 million penalty. The cottage electrical sabotage, yes, we have video footage, carries an additional $500,000 penalty. Brett slumped in his chair. However, Richard continued, and I heard something change in his voice, something almost pleased. There's one more matter, the most significant one. He pulled out a patent document. In 2012, a patent was filed for the Dunham Expansion Framework, the intellectual property that drove the company's IPO. This patent was filed not under Dunham Industries, but under an individual, R.L. Brightwell. He projected the document. I saw my pseudonym, my signature from 15 years ago. R.L. Brightwell, Richard continued, is Rosalind Louise Brightwell, Mrs. Dunham's maiden name. Forensic handwriting analysis confirms she authored the original framework. The patent has generated licensing fees of approximately $6.8 million annually for the past 15 years. I did the math in my head at the same time as everyone else. $102 million, Richard confirmed, in uncollected royalties, all belonging to Mrs. Dunham as the patent holder. Jennifer gasped. David dropped his pen. Patricia made a sound like she'd been punched. Thomas just stared at me. The final distribution, Richard said, pulling out the last document, is as follows. Thomas Dunham, $38.8 million after penalties. Ashley Dunham, $100,000 in educational trust. Brett Dunham, $50,000 after electrical sabotage penalty. David and Patricia Dunham, $500,000 each. Margaret Sullivan, $2 million plus full ownership of the cottage property and establishment of a scholarship fund in her name for demonstrated loyalty and compassion. Maggie's hand found mine under the table. Rosalind Dunham, the remaining estate of $46.5 million, plus patent royalties of $102 million, plus future annual royalties of $6.8 million, plus the primary residence and all personal effects. Total value, $148.5 million, plus ongoing income. The silence was absolute. I stood. Every eye in the room turned to me. I never wanted credit, I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. I wanted partnership. I wanted to be seen. For 42 years, I stood beside your father. I didn't stand behind him. I was beside him, equal to him, building everything together. I looked at Thomas. You saw me as invisible, as furniture, as someone waiting to die. Your father saw me as I was. That's why he did this. Not to punish you, Thomas. To teach you. I picked up my purse. The empire you thought was his, it was ours. Every brick, every dollar, every success. Ours. And you erased me from the story because it was easier than seeing the truth. I walked to the door, stopped, turned back. You have $38 million, Thomas. More than most people see in 10 lifetimes. What you don't have is the knowledge of who truly built your inheritance. You chose to see half the picture. That's not my failure. It's yours. I left. Maggie followed. Behind us, I heard Jennifer start to sob. They caught up to me in the parking lot. Mom, please. Thomas grabbed my arm. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know it was you. I turned to face him. You didn't ask. That's the problem. I thought Dad did everything. That's what he always said. He said we did everything. You just heard the he because that's what you wanted to hear. Jennifer pushed forward. This is ridiculous. You manipulated a dying man. I saved a dying company, I said, ice in my voice. Twice, while you Googled how to spend inheritance. I stayed silent for 30 years. Silence isn't manipulation, Jennifer. It's sacrifice. You mistook sacrifice for weakness. Ashley appeared, phone down for once, tears on her face. Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. You meant every word, every sticky note, every plan for my bedroom. I looked at her. You have a trust fund for education. Use it. Learn something. Maybe start with empathy. Brett stood behind them, hands in pockets. The electricity thing. Jennifer told me to. Thomas spun. She what? She said if Grandma got sick, we'd get the house faster, Brett mumbled. The color drained from Thomas's face. He looked at Jennifer like he'd never seen her before. Our future, Jennifer said desperately. I was thinking of our future. Our future? Thomas's voice broke. Or your greed? I didn't wait for the rest. I walked to my car where Maggie was waiting. Where to? She asked. Home, I said. To pack. You're selling the house? Eventually. But first I'm turning it into something that matters. The house looked different now, lighter. The renovations I'd commissioned had opened up Fred's study, turned Jennifer's planned yoga studio into something better, an office for the Frederick and Rosalind Dunham Foundation. The mission was simple: support women over 50 starting businesses, returning to education, reclaiming careers they'd set aside, women whose contributions had been erased, women whose stories deserved to be heard. We'd already funded 200 businesses. The applications came from everywhere: a 63-year-old starting a bakery after her husband's death, a 57-year-old finishing her law degree after raising 4 kids, a 70-year-old launching a tech consulting firm. Every story reminded me of my own. Maggie ran the foundation as director. She'd also started her nursing degree, funded by the scholarship Fred had established in her name. Another application, she said, bringing me coffee in what used to be my prison. The cottage, now renovated into my writing studio. Single mother, 54, wants to open a women's shelter. She has the experience, just needs the capital. Approved, I said without hesitation. Send her the standard package. Through the window I could see the rose garden. I'd replanted it exactly as Fred had designed it, adding one new variety, a white rose with pink edges I'd had a botanist develop. Its official name was Brightwell's Legacy, but I called them Fred's Roses. They bloomed year-round. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas. Can I visit? Just me, please. He'd been texting once a week since the will reading. Awkward messages, apologetic. He was in therapy, he said, learning to see people instead of their utility. I typed back. Saturday, 2 p.m. Jennifer had left him, unable to cope with only $38 million. Ashley had gotten a job at the foundation, entry-level, proving herself. She'd publicly apologized on TikTok, started a series about invisible labor that had gone viral. Talk was cheap, but she was showing up, doing the work. That counted for something. Brett I'd cut off completely. He'd refused to apologize for the sabotage, showing no remorse. Some people don't change. I'd made peace with that. You seem happy, Maggie observed. I am. I looked around my writing studio. The cottage that was supposed to be my grave was now the place where I was writing my resurrection. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I should be. On my desk was the manuscript, Invisible Empire, a memoir. 300 pages so far, telling the truth about every secret sacrifice, every anonymous contribution, every erased achievement. My publisher said it would be a bestseller, but that wasn't why I was writing it. I was writing it for every woman who'd ever been told her work didn't matter, every wife who'd made her husband look good and disappeared into the background, every mother whose children forgot she was a person first. I was writing it because Fred had asked me to. In his last letter, the one I kept in my desk drawer, write it, let the world see what I saw. Saturday came. Thomas arrived alone, carrying flowers, roses, the kind Fred used to bring me. We sat in the garden, in the chairs Fred and I had picked out together 40 years ago. I've been thinking, Thomas said, about all the times you helped me with homework, how you always had the answer, always knew how to explain things. You were a good student. I was average. You made me look good. He smiled sadly. I'm starting to see a pattern. We sat in silence for a while. I resigned from the Dunham Industries Board, he said finally. I'm working in nonprofit now. Youth mentorship. teaching kids that success isn't just about money. Fred would have liked that. Would he have forgiven me for how I treated you? I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw the little boy who used to hold my hand during thunderstorms, the teenager who'd asked my advice about girls, the man who'd forgotten to see me as human. Fred forgave you before he died, I said. He left you $38 million and a chance to learn. The question isn't whether he forgave you. It's whether you've forgiven yourself. Thomas wiped his eyes. I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. After he left, I returned to my studio. On the wall above my desk, I'd hung a wooden sign Maggie had given me. It was carved from the oak tree that had split during last year's storm, the tree Fred and I had planted on our 10th anniversary. It read, "This house was funded by a burden. Enjoy the truth." I opened my laptop. The memoir was almost done. Just the ending left. I wrote, "For 30 years, I was the Empire's secret. For 1 week, I was its ghost. Now, I'm its voice. And I'm not done speaking. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside, remember, your story isn't over until you decide it is. I was more than a mother, more than a wife, more than a woman in the background. I was the mind that built the map. And when they erased me, I rewrote the ending. This is for every woman still waiting to be seen. Your time is coming. And when it does, speak so loudly that they can never unhear you again." I saved the document. Outside, the roses bloomed. Inside, I finally felt free. The Empire was never his alone. It was always ours. And now, the world would know.